Welcome back to Two Tickets, Please. I'm your host, Josiah Wampfler. For today's episode, we have a battle of the multiverses. First up, I will review the newest addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, director Sam Raimi's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Will Raimi's return to superhero filmmaking be a triumphant one? Will his signature style shine through? Then, it being June and Pride Month, I'm going to recommend 5 underseen queer films, before finally moving on to my review of the A24 multiverse movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. What craziness do the young directing duo The Daniels have in store for their vision of the multiverse? And is the Michelle Yeoh Oscar hype real? But first, let's dig into Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Every night, I dream the same dream. And then... the nightmare begins. I did what I had to do. Protect our world.
You cannot control everything, Strange. You opened the doorway between universes, and we don't know who or what will walk through it.
Wanda, what do you know about the multiverse?
Viz had his theories. He believed it was dangerous.
He was right.
I'm sorry, Stephen. Your desecration of reality will not go unpunished.
Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness has had a complicated road to its release date. Coming a crazy 6 years after the initial Strange film, its original director left due to creative differences, its script underwent massive rewrites, its release date itself was shifted due to the pandemic, and there have been reports of extensive reshoots leading up to the release as well. Still, with all the chaos surrounding its production, the Multiverse of Madness had 2 key promises that would hopefully make it worthwhile. The tantalizing prospect of the MCU tackling the concept of the multiverse, and the return of legendary director Sam Raimi to the superhero genre many years after he directed the Spider-Man films. After seeing it, Raimi's hand is certainly apparent in the film. But what it does with the multiverse left something to be desired. A couple things to know up top. This film is rated PG-13, and while it certainly falls within those bounds, if you are planning to watch this with children, you should probably be a bit cautious. There are some fairly graphic and violent scenes. Also, the Disney Plus TV show WandaVision is basically required viewing for this one. I'll touch on that more later. The Multiverse of Madness begins with Doctor Strange attending the wedding of his former lover, Christine. Suddenly, he is forced to spring into action when he spots a young woman being chased throughout the streets by a giant alien. He, along with his fellow sorcerer Wong, are able to defeat the creature and save the woman. They learn that her name is America Chavez, and though she doesn't know how to control it, she has the power to travel the multiverse by punching star-shaped portals in the fabric of reality. She is being chased across the multiverse by various demonic creatures who are intent on taking away her power, which would kill her. So Strange must help her learn to control her incredible gift and stop those chasing after her. Overall, the Multiverse of Madness is kind of a mess. A pretty fun mess, but a mess nonetheless. It's a film that feels like it underwent massive reshoots. A film that is in conflict with itself. It shoehorns plot points into its narrative that don't feel quite earned, certain characters are not developed very well, and tonally, it's a bit all over the place. The film's key problems revolve around America Chavez and its villain. Chavez is the primary new character that the MCU has decided to introduce into this film, and frankly, the introduction is not great. Now, to be clear, the actress that plays Chavez, Xochitl Gomez, is quite good. She has great natural charisma, good chemistry with Benedict Cumberbatch, and brings life to the character despite the failings of the script. But she is a plot device, a MacGuffin. Despite having a super cool power and being played by a promising young actress, she is not a fully fleshed out character, making it hard to be emotionally invested in her. She is the first Latina superhero in the MCU, but her arrival feels lackluster. She's also apparently the first queer MCU superhero, but that aspect of her character is completely excised from the film. This all makes for a remarkably underwritten character. In fact, the moment she finally learns to control her powers feels so laughably unearned and cheesy that it completely undercuts what otherwise should have been a highlight moment of the film. And overall, a pretty cool third act. While Chavez is underwritten within this film, the villain of the Multiverse of Madness feels underwritten in another way. For some reason, Marvel chose to kind of hide who the villain was, despite the film revealing it in under 30 minutes. Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, is the one who is trying to take Chavez's power. The given reason for Wanda's dark turn is that she wishes to use the power to travel to a universe in which her children exist. Children which she conjured in the TV show WandaVision, but exist in reality somewhere within the multiverse. Now, given that this was a Doctor Strange movie, and this plotline was pretty much completely hidden within the marketing of the film, I did not feel the need to watch WandaVision. Her character's turn to evil may make more sense to those who have watched it, though I've seen mixed reactions there as well. What Doctor Strange does is completely punt Wanda's character development into Disney's streaming show, which I felt was quite detrimental to the film. For anyone engaging with the Marvel Cinematic Universe purely in the films, which is a lot of people, the Wanda turn comes out of nowhere. Last we saw her, she was mourning the death of her beloved Vision, yet now she's chasing after children we didn't even know existed, and Vision isn't even mentioned. Now, by all accounts, Wanda's development in WandaVision was quite good, but many have pointed out that not only do her actions in the Multiverse of Madness erase or contradict some of that development, but it also plays into the unstable powered woman trope, which takes a female character with some amount of power and implies that she is prone to abuse of that power because she is emotionally unstable and less rational than the male character, i.e. Doctor Strange. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't write a good story about Wanda losing control and doing evil things. But in order for this storyline to come off as not a trope, there has to be depth to the character. It has to feel earned, which it didn't for me as someone who didn't see WandaVision, but also didn't even for many who have. The turn is made worse because it just doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Why is Wanda seeking a universe with her children but not Vision? Why is this character we have known largely as a hero willing to kill a girl for her power instead of helping her learn to control her power, using her to get to her children? The film hand-waves this away with the idea that Wanda has been corrupted by a dark, mystical book, but that feels pretty lazy. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is a fun theatrical experience, and thankfully one of the shorter MCU films in recent years, clocking in at just about 2 hours. That being said, it's also one of those films that immediately starts to unravel as soon as you leave the theater and give it any thought. That may be okay for some people, but as someone who likes to think about the films I watch more than just while I'm watching them, it ended up leaving a bad taste in my mouth. So if you are looking to have some fun, I do think you will find it in the Multiverse of Madness. And Sam Raimi's antics are well worth the price of admission. But it is still, unfortunately, a very flawed film that could have been far more interesting if it had been better written. I'm giving Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness 3 out of 5 stars. It is currently out in theaters and streaming on Disney+. it being the month of June, I thought that I would put together a short list of recommended queer films for Pride Month. Now, I'm sure many viewers have already heard of or seen films like Moonlight, Brokeback Mountain, or Boys Don't Cry. So I wanted to give you a list of films that maybe you hadn't seen or heard of. Here's my list of 5 underseen queer films for Pride Month. As I was looking through possible films to recommend, it was hard not to notice that there is a severe lack of happy queer films. Obviously, the LGBTQ+ community has dealt with persecution and hardship for a long time, so that isn't completely surprising. But I think it's important to show queer joy and queer love, as well as the barriers our community faces. My first recommendation, Princess Sid, is one of those rare movies. It centers on a teenage girl named Sid who visits her aunt in Chicago for several weeks in the summer. Her aunt is a writer. Sid is not much of a reader and much more into sports, so there is an immediate interesting dynamic as the two try to contend with one another and bond however they can. While Sid is in the city, she meets a cute tomboyish girl at a coffee shop and is instantly taken with her. When she tells her aunt, she is completely supportive and encourages her to explore this new connection. The cinematography is gorgeous, the performances are magnificent, and it is a wonderfully heartwarming tale of an aunt finding a way to connect with her niece and a young woman figuring out who she really is. Princess Sid is currently streaming on Hulu. Now, from a very joyful film to one that is decidedly less so despite its title, Happy Together from director Wong Kar-wai is an excellent drama about a gay couple from Hong Kong that moved to Argentina for a time and find themselves drifting apart. It's a complex look at a gay relationship that is falling apart because despite the love these two clearly have for each other, it's also clear they can't work together. Hong Kong legend Wong Kar-wai is one of my favorite directors of all time, and he is a master of conveying longing, dysfunction, and heartbreak. Happy Together is a stunning visual experience with vibrant images and unique cinematography that also happens to boast a cast that includes 2 of Hong Kong's greatest actors, Tony Leung and Leslie Cheung. It is their performances that tie everything together and make the film such a success. Happy Together is currently streaming on HBO Max and the Criterion Channel. My next recommendation is a raucous 2015 comedy centering on 2 trans sex workers in LA, Tangerine. Directed by Sean Baker, who famously filmed it on an iPhone, which still looks pretty great, Tangerine is wild, hilarious, heartbreaking, touching, and is also a Christmas movie. It is Christmas Eve, and Cindy just got out of prison, but unfortunately, she found out that her man has been cheating on her while she was away. So she embarks on a crazy adventure across the city with her best friend Alexandra to track down her man and the woman he has been sleeping with. Despite its zany premise, Tangerine also manages to boldly portray the difficulties that sex workers deal with, as well as trans folks more broadly. Cindy and Alexandra are played by actual trans women, something that isn't always common, especially for a film from 7 years ago. Plus, Baker included his actors in the writing process, which is probably why the characters are handled with such sensitivity and why they feel genuine. Tangerine is a wild and funny ride, but also one that packs an emotional punch. It is currently streaming on Netflix and Amazon. Lest we not forget that Pride Month is about queer liberation and is in fact political, my next recommendation is the 2014 British historical drama, Pride. Directed by Matthew Warchus, the film boasts a cast of incredible British actors, including George Mackay, Paddy Considine, Andrew Scott, Imelda Staunton, and Bill Nye. Set during the 80s in England during the height of the Thatcher administration's war on union mine workers, Pride centers on the incredible true story of a group of queer London activists who decide to raise money for the striking mine workers. Not all acts of solidarity are easily received, though, as the mine workers are hesitant about receiving support from queer folks. Still, the London activists are persistent and slowly start to break down the barriers between themselves and the miners. Pride is a wonderfully crafted film and a perfect reminder during Pride Month that the struggles of marginalized communities everywhere are linked, and by standing in solidarity with each other, We Are All Stronger. It's currently streaming on Amazon Prime and Peacock. My final recommendation is probably more widely seen than any of the other films on this list, but it's such a masterpiece and was weirdly snubbed by the Academy, so I couldn't help but put it on here. It is director Celine Sciamma's Portrait of a Lady on Fire. It's a period romance set in 18th century France and centers on an up-and-coming painter named Marianne, who is commissioned to paint a portrait of a young woman named Heloise, who is set to be married to a nobleman from Milan. The catch is, Heloise refuses to sit for the painting in protest of the marriage, so Marianne must paint her from memory. As the two women spend time together, though, they begin to fall in love. Portrait of a Lady on Fire is a tremendously gorgeous film. The performances of its cast are so spectacular, you could practically only watch their eyes and understand the story. And Sciamma's writing is breathtaking, giving her actors some of the most poetic and compelling dialogue I've ever heard in a film. Portrait of a Lady on Fire is truly a masterpiece and is currently streaming on Hulu.
Mrs. Wang. Mrs. Wang.
Mrs. Wang, are you with us?
I am paying attention.
Now, you may only see a pile of receipts, but I see a story. I can see where this story is going. It does not look good.
What's happening?
Evelyn, I'm not your husband. I'm another version of him from another universe. I'm here because we need your help.
Very busy today. No time to help you.
Across the multiverse, I've seen thousands of Evelyns. You can access all of their memories, their emotions, even their skills. There's a great evil spreading throughout the multiverses. And you may be our only chance of stopping it.
Don't make me fight you. I am really good.
I don't believe you.
That was the trailer for Everything Everywhere All at Once, the second film in this battle of the multiverses. The A24 smash hit is directed by the burgeoning young directing duo known as the Daniels, and stars the legendary Michelle Yeoh, along with Stephanie Hsu and Ke Huy Quan, who you may know as Short Round from Indiana Jones. Now, despite appearing as the David to the MCU's Doctor Strange Goliath, it almost felt unfair that Everything Everywhere All at Once got to theaters before its multiverse competition. Despite having a budget only a fraction the size of any Marvel film, not only does this absurdist sci-fi comedy tackle its exploration of the multiverse in a more interesting and fully realized way, but it also manages to be an extremely funny and touching film about the immigrant experience, parenting, queer struggles, nihilism, and youth depression. In short, Everything Everywhere All at Once truly is everything I love and look for in cinema, including how it is even better seen in a crowded theater. Evelyn Wong, played by Yeoh, is the owner of a struggling laundromat along with her husband Waymond, played by Quan. We're introduced to the couple as they are in the midst of being audited by the IRS and trying to plan a party for Evelyn's father that night, who is visiting the States from China for the first time. As if there wasn't enough chaos in the cluttered apartment, as Evelyn hunts for old paperwork and receipts, Waymond tries to broach the subject of the divorce papers he has in his hands, and their daughter Joy is trying to gain approval for her girlfriend to attend the party that night. Oh, and of course, they also have a business to run. Suffice to say, the Daniels really run with the idea of everything everywhere all at once to start the film. This setup alone could make a fantastic film, but unbeknownst to Evelyn, she is about to get thrown into a way wackier sequence of events. On their way up to an important meeting in the IRS office, Evelyn encounters a version of Waymond from an alternate timeline who warns her about a grave threat that is raging across the multiverse wreaking havoc. He tells her that she, the Evelyn of this universe, may be the only one who can stop that threat. After being berated by an IRS employee for their tax mistakes, all hell breaks loose as Evelyn gets a glimpse at the forces threatening the fabric of reality, and she must learn to embrace all the skills her alternate selves have acquired over the expanse of the multiverse in order to defeat the threat. I would be remiss not to talk about the incredible cast of this film up top. That, of course, starts with the pivotal Michelle Yeoh, who delivers one of the best performances of her entire career. As Yeoh put it in an interview, Everything Everywhere All at Once was a golden opportunity to show the world her full talents.
Because when I read the script, I thought, this is something, oh dear. This is something I've been waiting for a long time. That's going to give me the opportunity to show my fans, my family, my audience, what I'm capable of. To be funny, to be real, to be sad. Finally, somebody understood that I can do all these things.
Now, of course, we get the martial arts badass that many know. But we also get a ton of touching, dramatic, and even humorous moments from Yeoh as well. As Evelyn jumps from universe to universe, Yeoh takes advantage of each new opportunity to plumb the depths of her incredible talent. Now, equally tremendous performances are logged by Ke Huy Quan as Waymond and Stephanie Hsu as their daughter Joy. Starting with Quan, he had actually been out of acting since the early 2000s, disappointed by the lack of interesting roles for Asian men, and had decided to make a comeback shortly before the Daniels came calling. Quan turned that serendipity into the comeback performance to end all comeback performances. His ability as Waymond to jump back and forth between several different versions of the character, some extraordinarily different from the Waymond we first meet, and sometimes within the same shot, is incredibly impressive. He has to perform difficult action choreography, and most importantly, Quan's Waymond is the emotional anchor for the entire film. Just as I will be rooting for a Michelle Yeoh Oscar nomination for her wonderful performance, I would also like to see one for Quan, who is truly magnificent. As for Stephanie Hsu, she is perhaps tasked with the most expansive performance of the film that ranges from restraint to the height of camp. She is both asked to lend a ton of nuance to certain moments, but also bring the most chaotic and deranged energy to others. There is even a fair amount of important exposition dumped on her, which can often bog down a performance. But Hsu absolutely slays every scene she is in. Moving on to the actual look of the film, directors Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert have made one of the most visually impressive films I've ever seen. True to the mind-bending idea of an infinite number of universes, they don't just settle for exploring a couple alternate lives for Evelyn and the other characters of the film. They throw everything in the kitchen sink at us. In sequences that nearly overload the senses, the Daniels give us glimpses of Evelyn as a sign spinner, a professional cook, a world where everyone has hot dog fingers, a world in which she's just a rock, and of course, a world in which she becomes a famous actor known for kung fu movies. All of these alternate worlds are presented in stunning fashion, and each one is allowed to have their own unique visual style and even color palette. And despite only having a small group that consisted of a handful of visual effects artists, the visual effects throughout these sequences are expertly realized. Now, the multiverse is a fun concept to play around with, but as with much science fiction, an over-reliance on exposition that spells out the rules can sour the whole affair. The Daniels masterfully avoid this by leaning into the absurdity and trusting their audience. The experience of seeing Everything Everywhere All at Once for the first time can be a bit overwhelming, as per the themes of the film. But I was never lost, as I had just enough to understand what was going on. The Daniels smartly give us the ground rules and trust that we can follow along, so that they can spend their time exploring all the multiverse has to offer and digging deep into the family drama that is at the center of the film. It is that drama that I think truly elevates the film to greatness. Everything Everywhere All at Once, at its core, is an immigrant story. It is about a couple that left their home in China to start a new life together in America. It's about a mother who is struggling to relate to her daughter. It's about a daughter who doesn't feel fully seen by her family. And it's about a couple that left home years ago, looking back on the life that they have made together and wondering what might have been. Somehow, within an absurdist, high-concept sci-fi comedy, the Daniels managed to convey all of these things. Now, obviously, I'm not Asian American, nor does my family have any recent history of immigration, so there are better places to hear about that aspect of the story. I would really recommend the Diving Back into Everything Everywhere All at Once episode of the Culturally Relevant podcast, where host David Chen and film critic Walter Chaw dig deep and get personal on what the film meant to them as children of Chinese immigrants to America. Now, what spoke so deeply to me personally about Everything Everywhere All at Once was its broader themes about the world we are currently living in and how easy it can be to fall into a sense of nihilism and get overwhelmed. Honestly, it doesn't feel like a lot of people in my generation or those younger than me have a lot of hope that the future is going to be better than the present. We have a toxic political climate, an actual climate catastrophe bearing down on us, a pandemic that won't seem to go away, the constant violence of mass shootings and police brutality, and economic conditions that have put us behind where we thought we would be at this point in our lives. Everything Everywhere All at Once doesn't pretend to have answers to any of that. In the end, the Daniels understand that their film is entertainment. Hopefully it's entertainment that can make us feel seen, give us some laughs, and maybe give us a few things to think about. But it is ultimately up to us to find solutions to the world's problems. Everything Everywhere All at Once instead encourages us to reject nihilism and embrace hope. Not because we are irrational for feeling hopeless in the face of all the problems in our world, but because the path of nihilism can only lead to certain failure. In the end, unlike Evelyn, we do not have the ability to jump to alternate realities and access lives we may have lived. This is the life we get, and this is the world we live in. We can either embrace hope in our community, in our loved ones, and in our humanity, or be sucked into a pit of despair. And who knows? Maybe, like Evelyn, our seemingly unspecial existence may just be a part of defeating the threats we face. Everything Everywhere All at Once is an absolute blast, and I'm giving it 5 out of 5 stars. It is currently still out in theaters and available to buy on digital, and will be available for rent on VOD platforms on July 5th. That wraps up this episode of 2 Tickets Please. If you would like more of my thoughts on new release films and other films I watch, I recently launched a blog on Substack.com. There you can find written reviews for a variety of films that I've been watching. I have reviews from the Wisconsin Film Festival, a piece about 3 films that tackle abortion given recent events, and much more. You can check that out at 2ticketsplease.substack.com. Thanks for watching.